On Colombia's Caribbean coast lies Santa Marta, a city where turquoise waters meet colonial streets, and where backpackers come chasing sun, history, and adventure. In the spring of 2025, an Italian scientist named Alessandro Coatti arrived to Santa Marta looking for exactly that. Friends say he was curious, generous, and driven by a love of discovery. But just days into his stay, Alessandro disappeared. When police finally traced his last movements, they uncovered something far darker than anyone had imagined. A dismembered body in a suitcase, a trail of false identities, and a string of unanswered questions.
Colombian police were investigating after the dismembered body of a scientist from London was found in a suitcase. 42-year-old Italian national Alessandro Coatti had left the UK to travel to South America. Parts of his body were found in a stream. He worked for the prestigious Royal Society of Biology.
Tonight, we retrace the final days of a brilliant mind whose journey to Colombia ended in tragedy and explore the mystery of who killed Alessandro Coatti. Alessandro Coatti was not some anonymous drifter wandering from hostel to hostel. At 35, he had already built a resume most young scientists only dream of. Born and raised in a small town outside Verona in northern Italy, he was a gifted student who gravitated to the life sciences early on. After earning a PhD in molecular biology, he joined an international research team in London, where he worked on projects funded by the Royal Society of Biology. His colleagues remember him as meticulous but approachable, a scientist who could take the most complex gene expression pathways and turn them into stories people actually understood. He published papers, advised graduate students, and sat on panels about science policy, not the usual profile of someone who would later appear in true crime headlines. But by late 2024, after a decade in the high-pressure world of British academia, Alessandro wanted a break. Friends say he spoke often about seeing the world beyond the lab and volunteering somewhere that needed his skills. He sold most of his belongings, packed a lightweight backpack and a laptop, and booked a one-way ticket to Colombia. In emails and social media posts, he described the country's biodiversity jaguars, poison dart frogs, cloud forests as a living laboratory. He hoped to volunteer with conservation groups, maybe teach science workshops to children in rural areas. His first stop was Santa Marta on Colombia's Caribbean coast, a bustling port city framed by the Sierra Nevada mountain. Known as the gateway to Tayrona National Park, Santa Marta attracts backpackers and eco-tourists with its beaches, colonial architecture, and easy access to rainforest trails. Alessandro checked into a small but popular hostel a few blocks from the waterfront, the kind of place with hammocks on the patio and a whiteboard listing daily excursions. Staff remember him taking early morning walks to the marina and chatting with other travelers in the common kitchen over Colombian coffee. He posted photos of palm-lined beaches and tagged friends in comments about how alive the city felt. By all accounts, he seemed relaxed, happy, and eager to immerse himself in the local culture. He met a few Colombian researchers at a cafe, went on a group hike to a nearby waterfall, and messaged his sister in Italy about his plans for the next leg of his trip. Then, abruptly, the tone of his digital footprint stopped. Messages went unanswered. Calls rang through. Within days, friends who were used to his quick replies began to worry. What began as a promising sabbatical for a respected molecular biologist was about to become an international murder investigation, drawing in police from 2 continents and sparking headlines in Italian, British and Colombian media alike. Santa Marta to most, it's paradise. To some, a place where paradise turns on you. The city sits where the Sierra Nevada mountains meet the Caribbean Sea. A swirl of beaches, colonial plazas, street vendors selling arepas, and nightclubs thumping until dawn. Backpackers drift in and out of its hostels, and foreign scientists often pass through on their way to Tayrona National Park. That's where Alessandro Coatti, 35, made his base a modest hostel near the historic center, a place with hammocks on the porch and a view of the cathedral's bell tower. Alessandro was curious about everything: barrio life, jungle hikes, the sea turtles nesting on nearby beaches. He struck up conversations with everyone from hostel staff to local academics. That openness extended online. According to Italian and Colombian press reports, he created a profile on Grindr, a well-known dating app used by gay, bi, and queer men. In Santa Marta, Grindr is a common way for visitors and locals to meet, but police say it's also been exploited in past robberies and assaults targeting foreign travelers. On the evening of March 30th, investigators say Alessandro messaged someone through Grindr and arranged the meeting. CCTV from nearby businesses later showed him walking out of the hostel in casual clothes, phone in hand, looking calm, maybe even excited. Hostel staff remember he left with a smile and said he'd be back later. Nothing seemed unusual, yet after that point, the digital trail goes thin. His phone stops sending location data, he misses a planned early morning hike, messages and calls go unanswered. By the next morning, whispers turn to worry. When had Alessandro last eaten breakfast in the common room? Where was his day pack, the one he always carried? Hostel staff noticed his bed untouched, his passport and laptop still locked in his locker, a sign he intended to return. But by midday, March 31st, the absence felt heavy. Friends and family tried calling from Italy. Social media stayed silent. Something had shifted. Something was wrong. 2 days after he was last seen, that quiet unease became a grim discovery. Residents on the outskirts of Santa Marta called police about a large suitcase dumped near a dirt road at the edge of a banana grove. It was heavy, sealed with tape, and giving off a smell no one could ignore. Inside, detectives found body parts, a head, hands, and feet separated from the torso. Forensic teams worked through the night, cataloging what they could. Identification at first was difficult. Then, a small detail changed everything. A simple bracelet from the hostel where Alessandro had been staying, the kind staff hand out to guests. It matched the register under his name. Within hours, Colombian authorities knew they weren't dealing with a missing tourist. They were investigating the murder of a foreign scientist, a case that would soon make headlines in Rome, Bogota, and London. As the search widened, the horror deepened. In the days after the suitcase was found, police combed creeks, trash pits, and vacant lots on the edge of Santa Marta. At a second location, a dry ravine half a mile from the first site, they uncovered more human remains wrapped in plastic. Forensic technicians worked under floodlights through the night, taking swabs, photographing every detail. The brutality shocked even veteran investigators. One senior officer later told Colombian media he had rarely seen a crime scene so methodical, yet so cold. The Italian embassy in Bogota was notified immediately. Consular officials contacted Alessandro's family and began coordinating with Colombian prosecutors. Interpol flagged the case internationally, warning that the suspects could try to flee across borders. By April 5th, the Santa Marta police commander held a press conference, announcing a reward of 50 million pesos, about $11,000 for information leading to arrests. What had started as a missing person alert was now formally classified as an international homicide investigation. With confirmation that the remains belonged to Alessandro Coatti, Colombian authorities shifted from recovery to pursuit. Detectives subpoenaed his phone records, bank transactions, and app messages. Grindr, under court order, provided logs showing a meeting arranged on the night of March 30th at a private address on the city's outskirts, a small, unregistered house at the end of an unlit street. It wasn't a hostel, wasn't a restaurant, had no public listing. CCTV footage from nearby shops captured Alessandro walking toward that neighborhood at 8:47 p.m. But no footage ever showed him leaving. The digital trail revealed more. After Alessandro vanished, his debit card was used for 3 small cash withdrawals from different ATMs, classic test transactions that police say are often used by robbers to see if a PIN works. His phone pinged cell towers for a few more hours before going dark completely. When detectives compared his data to unsolved robberies of other foreigners in Santa Marta, a pattern emerged. A small group of young people allegedly using dating apps to lure visitors with the promise of companionship, then robbing them, sometimes violently. By mid-April, a special task force executed raids across the city. 4 suspects were arrested: Oswal, Moisés, Ospino, Navarro, Isaac Enrique Márquez, Charris, Andrea, Camila, Berdugo, Escorcia, and Brian Augusto Cantillo Salcedo. Officials alleged the group beat Alessandro with a blunt object inside that unregistered house, then dismembered the body to slow identification and dumped the parts in separate locations. Forensic teams recovered traces of Alessandro's blood on a mattress, a machete, and a vehicle linked to the suspects. DNA from the suitcase matched samples taken from the house. For prosecutors, it was the evidence they needed to formally charge the group with aggravated homicide, kidnapping, and robbery, turning a mystery that had transfixed 2 continents into a criminal case, now moving through Colombia's courts. Cases like Alessandro Coatti's, while statistically rare, are not as isolated in Colombia as many travelers might think. Over the last decade, Colombian authorities have documented a pattern of crimes against foreign visitors that share the same blueprint: a friendly connection online, a private meeting, and then robbery, assault, or worse. Police in Bogota and Medellin have issued repeated warnings about citas falsas, false dates arranged through apps such as Grindr, Tinder, or WhatsApp. Victims have included backpackers, business people, and even diplomats. The attacks are usually quick and calculated, designed to separate tourists from cash, cards, or passwords before they can call for help. Criminologists say these so-called honey trap operations exploit three universal vulnerabilities: trust, curiosity, and the desire for connection, especially powerful when someone is far from home. A profile photo, a warm chat, a promise of a night out in an unfamiliar city can disarm even seasoned travelers. In some cases, the perpetrators work in pairs or small crews, with one posing as the date and another waiting nearby to help with the robbery. Drugs such as scopolamine, sometimes called devil's breath, have been used to incapacitate victims before theft or kidnapping. Colombian press reports link this method to dozens of non-fatal robberies and a handful of high-profile murders. Experts stress that awareness and small precautions can dramatically lower the risk. Meet in public, well-lit places. Tell a friend or family member exactly where you're going. Keep your phone's location sharing on, and never carry large amounts of cash or all your credit cards at once. Use the built-in video call features in apps to verify that a person matches their photos before meeting. If anything feels off the location, the timing, the tone of messages cancel. Even a careful traveler can be at risk, but preparation and vigilance shift the odds. Alessandro's story underscores that adventure and discovery are an essential part of life, but so is self-protection. For people exploring new countries, caution is not paranoia, it's survival. In a world where technology connects strangers faster than ever, the same apps that can open doors to new friendships can also expose travelers to predators. His case stands as a warning and a lesson. In places of beauty, danger can hide in plain sight.